so that we can pass this on we can record it and put it out. So welcome everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the Scrum Master as a coach. Before we get started, I just want to take a couple of minutes to introduce Kapala Consulting for those of you who are new, introduce Lucy and myself as the speakers today, and some logistics. My name is Anu Smalley. I am the founder of Kapala Consulting Group, and I am a certified Scrum trainer. I'm a certified enterprise coach. Our mission at Kapala Consulting is to assist organizations and individuals maximize their capabilities and their unique journeys in Agile, in life, across the gamut. I'm just one of the handful of trainers, licensed trainers, who teach all of the Scrum Alliance classes. So that's a little bit about me. So we have Lucy. Let me get into Lucy. So Lucy and I are going to be co-presenting today. Lucy is a certified Scrum professional, and she's the owner and founder of .Frog Consulting. She is in the midst of her own journey to become a certified Scrum trainer. Lucy's been working in the Agile space for 2012-ish, and she's been involved with Scrum teams as a developer, as a product owner, as a Scrum Master, and most recently, she has stepped into the role of consultant and is now officially an Agile coach as a consultant. Both of us have about 25 plus years in the IT space, and we have experience in software, nonprofit, financial services, hardware, all kinds of things. So Lucy, thank you for being here.
For having me.
So a couple of things before we get started. I just want to let people know we do monthly webinars. Our next webinar will be June 10th at noon Eastern. It is on use of liberating structures to facilitate. So whether you're facilitating a remote meeting, an in-person meeting in the future, what are some liberating structure? What is a liberating structure? And we'll get into all of that stuff in the next webinar. And we will get, when we send you an email, you will have links to sign up for this webinar as well. As Kapala Consulting, as I said, we do a bunch of training, we do coaching. So if you're looking for classes, check us out. We'd be happy to have you in our classes. And finally, this is for me, this is the fun part. At Kapala Consulting, we are trying to host some communities of practice for Scrum Masters, for product owners, for Agile leaders. I know some of you have already joined. The participation goes up and down there, so we will send you links to this as well, so that we can get more conversation going on how do we move along our Agile journey. So that's a little bit logistics wise. Lucy and I, we're going to be trading off today with our presentation. We're going to talk about the Scrum Master as a coach, stepping into some core coaching skills. And Lucy is going to kick us off with where we left off last time. So Lucy.
Thank you so much, Anu. Thank you. So if you've attended all of these webinars that we've been doing, first we did the Scrum Master as facilitator, then we did Scrum Master as trainer, and now we're doing Scrum Master as coach. And one of the reasons that we're doing these webinars is because there are a lot of misconceptions out there about what the Scrum Master role is or who the Scrum Master is. And I'm not going to go over all of this. You've seen this cloud before, but it's just, you know, a lot of the things that people out there think Scrum Masters are, and that's why we're going through all of these different competencies for the Scrum Master. And today we'll be stepping into the Scrum Master as coach, as Anu just said. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to do a poll on what you all feel a coach is. So what is a coach for you? So if you follow the link that's on here, pollev.com, Luciano Key 409, or you can text it and just give us one word that you feel is what a coach is. Okay, and we're going to see a cloud coming up as we go through that.
So Lucy, there are a few more people joining, so maybe you can repeat the instructions one more time.
Sure. So for the people who just joined, we are doing a poll right now to see what the folks on the call feel a coach is. So on the slide, there's a link right there, pollev.com/LucianaOki409, or you can also text to 22333. And it's just one word that comes to mind when you think about a coach. And we'll see what you all come up with. So far we have leader, listener, true, guide, a lighthouse. Oh, I like that.
I like that. Yeah.
Gave me goosebumps, that one.
Yeah.
Motivator.
Listener.
Yeah, looks like leader and guide. A lot of people are probably putting that in. And we have some people putting it on the chat as well. So guide, advisor.
Challenger. I like that one. Friend.
Alrighty. So I think a lot of people are thinking the same thing. Friend, mentor, I see on the chat as well.
Mm-hmm.
These are great. So thank you to those who participated in the poll. So I just wanted to see what you all thought that a coach is, and then you're going to see how that compares to what our definition of coach is, or what a definition. Okay, so thank you. So, so growth, interested, yeah. Those are great. Thank you so much. So what is a coach? So the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, defines coaching as partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. So that is the ICF definition. But a coach, if you've been to these webinars before, you know, there's for the facilitator, I talked about being unbiased. For the trainer, I talked about being biased. So when it comes to the coach, this again is an unbiased hat or competency that the Scrum Master would wear or be. We provide guidance as a coach, but we let people figure things out for themselves. We let people unlock their own potential and maximize their own performance. We help people see new perspectives and possibilities. And as a coach, we don't have to have a knowledge of the subject matter, because we are not telling people what to do, right? We are listening to them and helping them get to their own conclusions. So as coaches, we are not your leader. We're not your boss. We're not your decision maker. What we're going to do is we are going to guide you and give you feedback. We're going to hold up the mirror to you so you can see the truths within yourself. And we're going to challenge you and maybe even call you out sometimes as a coach. And that's okay, right? That's part of the agreement that you have with the person that you're coaching, that it's okay to do those things. And what we need from people that we are coaching is their trust, first and foremost, their permission to coach them, and their willingness to try. So this is as coaches, we believe that people are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. This is our true belief as a coach. What this means is that people are not broken. They don't need to be fixed. They don't need to be rescued. All that they need is already within themselves, and they have the ability to overcome their circumstances. We honor that client or the coachee, whatever you want to call them, as an expert in their life and their work. So we are not experts. They know what's going on. They know what the situations are that they're in, that they need coaching on, and they'll come up with the right decisions on what needs to happen.
So based on what Lucy's just talked through, right? So this is where we step into, as a coach, you start with self. First, you got to be self-aware. How do you increase your self-awareness? You are looking at getting feedback, doing 360s, using tools like the Johari window to increase your own self-awareness. How are you showing up? How do you react to people? All of those things you're looking at to increase self-awareness. Self-management is another key when you're working with clients. Imagine a situation where you might be coaching somebody on a topic that has deeply impacted you. As a coach, if you're going to be neutral, you got to do a lot of self-management. I recently had to coach somebody who was struggling with the fact that she had family in India and she was struggling with what was happening in India now. I have family in India, but I can't let that blur the line. So I have to do a lot of self-management to say, my experiences are very different. Your experiences are different. This is about you, not about what I'm thinking, right? So self-management is key. Ask for permission. Lucy mentioned that. Coach, you cannot coach people without getting their permission. Permission can be very formal. It can be a contract you create. Before every session, you ask, are you ready for some coaching today? Maybe today's session, you don't feel like coaching. Today, you just want to hang out and chat with your friend or to have a mentoring session, and that's okay. So ask for permission to say, may I coach you today? Are you open to coaching? Trust your intuition. Your intuition is the best tool you have as a coach. You are going to get this feeling. You know that feeling sometimes you get when you're working with team members and you go, you're not telling me everything. That's your intuition. When you feel it, say something. And say, wait, is there something you're not telling me? And they're going to go, how did you know? Well, that's your intuition, right? So trust your intuition. Ask powerful questions. We're going to get into powerful questions in a minute. Listen actively. We've all heard of active listening. We're going to talk about that. Dance in the moment. This is one of the other key things on here. We cannot have a plan and say, in this coaching session today, I'm going to do A, B, C, and Elizabeth is going to react this way. I have no idea how anybody will react. You have to dance in the moment. You do not know what's going to come up, and you have to be able to shift and pivot. So trust your intuition and pivot as needed. And finally, be willing to give and receive feedback. You are going to receive implicit feedback and explicit feedback. Your client may react in a certain way. That's implicit feedback. Deal with that and pivot in the moment. Your client may say, I got very uncomfortable today in our session. That's feedback. And being uncomfortable is not always a bad thing, right? Being uncomfortable means I got you to a place where you went, I don't want to talk about it. Well, then that's exactly the topic we want to talk about. So figure out how do you give and receive feedback? So when you step into the realm of a coach, this is what we are talking about, right? And if you have any questions as we go along, just feel free to put them in the chat or so that we can do Q&A later as well. Coaching stance. This is something I want to spend a little bit of time on. So without this concept of a coaching stance, the work of a coach can become very manipulative or one-sided or more of what I want for you, not what you want for me. So Lucy just talked about the fact that there is that we believe that people are now broken, they don't need fixing, they're all good. They're naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. So if I don't focus on the coaching stance, I could miss that. I could forget that. So what do we mean by this? So maintaining neutrality. I think Lucy mentioned this earlier about you have to be neutral. You cannot have a plan for your client, right? By neutrality, we mean I'm not going to say, you know what I think you should do. This is best for you. I do not know what's best for you. Only you know what's best for you. So being completely neutral, even when I desperately want to, in order to maintain neutrality, that self-management has to come in. In order to maintain neutrality, that self-management has to come in. I want to blurt and say, hey, I think you should do this. Do some self-management so that you don't. Maintain neutrality at all times. Serving the client's agenda at all time, whether it's an individual, whether it's a team, whether it's an organization, your job is to make sure you're serving the client. Again, the client is not broken. They don't need fixing. They just need a little guidance. They need to figure out what they need to do. So our job is to focus on what they need and not what we think they need. Serving is a lot of different things. We need to believe that we need to know that clients are experts in their own lives. They know the decisions. They have the answers. We're just trying to clean up some fuzz in front of their faces or their brains so that they can identify what those are. Reducing client dependencies. I have a big pet peeve about consulting companies that will put coaches into organizations for 5 years. That means you're part of the system now. You cannot see outside the box because you're part of the box. You're in the box. How can you see outside the box? The longest gig I've ever had as a coach is 18 months. And that was because every 4 or 5 months, I would shift to a new line of business in that company. And I felt that was okay. After 18 months, even with this large company, I was like, nah, this is not going to work. Because if you stay too long, your clients are going to be dependent on you. They cannot do anything without you saying, hey, what else do you think you should do? So our job is to teach them, coach them to figure out how to do this stuff. Not colluding. This is the hardest thing, especially for consultants. If your clients are going down a path where you're going, seriously, that's the most unagile thing you can do. But because they're paying your paycheck, you go, sure, that's a great idea. That's colluding. So we do not want to collude. Our job is to hold our clients in good standing, and we need to represent agility at all times. So how can you be true to your client and agile mindset? That is not colluding. Making sure when the client is stepping off the wrong foot, you step in and go, whoa, that's not being very agile. Right? And finally, signature presence. There's a book written by Mary Beth O'Neill called Executive Coaching with Backbone and Heart. And Lucy, if you can type that into the chat window, that'd be great. In this book, Mary Beth talks about how we are all influenced by the people we see in our lives. But as coaches, I may see Lucy do something. I may see Tom doing something, and I go, "Ooh, that's pretty cool. I think I want to borrow that technique, that approach, that tool, whatever. But I need to make it my voice. It has to be my signature presence. I cannot coach with Lucy's voice or Tom's voice or Leah's voice. It has to be my own voice that has to be the coach. So when you're looking at coaching, when you're getting into coaching, this is the 5 elements of a coaching stance. We start here, we end here. This is where we stay. Anytime you think you're shifting away, bring yourself back to the coaching stance by remembering these 5 elements. They're very critical. One of the things I do is I have these printed on a little I've written them down on a little sticky note, and I keep them right here. And anytime I feel like, I'm not doing my clients justice, I look at that and I remember. So do whatever self-management tricks you need to do. So that's your coaching stance. We're going to get into a couple of techniques or tools. One is powerful questions. Powerful questions, open-ended questions, also called Socratic questioning. This is where our jobs is to get our clients to explore, not explain. If I ask a question, so Tom, why didn't you do that? Tom's going to get into an explanation of why he didn't do that. Here's the thing. If you didn't do it, then you didn't do it. It's done. It's in the past. What does it matter? So let's explore, how can you learn from this, move forward? How do you make sure you never do it again if it is not a good thing, and so forth. Powerful questioning is our ability as a coach to ask those open-ended questions. Did you do this? No. Boom, you got no place to go. What did you do? What do you want? What will that get you? Bunch of powerful questions. I'm going to throw this in the chat window when Lucy's talking. I have a document that that somebody shared with me. It's 121 powerful questions. And when I first started, I had 2 pages of powerful questions. When I first started as a coach, I would have both those pages printed out and available. And if I thought one question landed flat, I'd go, okay, let me quickly look through the questions and ask another. Again, trust your intuition to ask, to figure out which question is the best one, right? Powerful questions should get your clients to explore what they will do, what they want. If you feel yourself asking questions that go, why did you do this? Why did you not? What is stopping you? That means you're no longer asking powerful questions. You are now going into close-ended questions. One of my favorite questions, I have a coach, right? So she asks me this all the time. So what do you want me to ask you? And I'm going, huh? Wait, what? It makes me think. So here's how you know that your powerful question is spot on. If your client goes, that's an interesting one. If you're making them think, you're on the right track. If your questions make your client go, well, that's a very good question. That's a tough question to answer. You're on the right track. If your client says, I really don't want to talk about that, guess what? We're going to talk about that, because that means you're on the right track. So when you get responses like that, don't move away from that. Don't say, oh, really? That's a tough question. Okay, let me ask you a different one. Stay with your client through the uncomfortableness. Powerful questions. One of my and if you ask your client, and I'm looking at my notes on my sticky notes here, one of my coaches told me, if you hear the I don't know, that means the question didn't land. Right? So then try a different question. I don't know means there was not enough resonance with your client with that question. Right? So that's powerful questions. Questions on powerful questions, drop them in the chat window. And Tammy, thank you for putting in the Amazon link to Mary Beth's book. Brilliant. All right, so I'm going to hand it back over to Lucy for a bit.
Thanks, Anu. So let's talk about active listening. Once again, if you've been through these webinars, we talked about active listening a little bit when I talked about the Scrum Master as facilitator, because you need to use active listening during that time as well. So just a reminder of what active listening is. It's about having the ability to encourage, accept, explore, support the client's self-expression, focus completely on what they're saying and also not saying. So we're going to talk about in depth here, and hearing exactly what it is that they're trying to convey to you, right? Sometimes not just about the words, it's about everything else that comes with it. So what does it mean to active listen to someone, right? That means that we are paying attention to them. It means that we are withholding judgment. It means that we're reflecting on what we're hearing. It means that we are clarifying what we are hearing, and that we can summarize to ourselves what we are understanding from that conversation. And also observing body language is important. And, one of the things when it comes to powerful questions that Anu was just talking about, a lot of times you're going to ask a question and they're not going to give you an answer right away. So being okay with silence is part of being a good active listener. So learn to be okay with that. I think I've talked about that before as well. I had a huge problem with silence a few years ago, where if I asked a question and somebody wouldn't answer, whether it be in a Scrum event or some other time, I'd be like, okay, crickets, who's going to say something, right? Because it's uncomfortable. We all know silence is uncomfortable. But I've gotten to a point where I ask a question, and if nobody says anything, I count to 15 in my head. And 15 seconds is long. It's not quick. It is long when you're just waiting. But learn to do that. Learn to just think of something else for those 15 seconds and go with it. And a lot of times when your coachees or your clients, and if you're a Scrum Master, it will be probably your team, when they're silent, it's because they're thinking. So give them the time to think about their answers. And that's why being okay with silence is so important. So there are 3 levels of listening that we are going to be talking about. The first one is focused listening, when all the attention is directed one way. We also refer to this as level 1 listening. So you are primarily listening to yourself, your own thoughts, your own agenda. So I've talked about this before too in one of the other webinars, but how many times are you having a conversation with somebody and they're talking about an experience they had, and you're like, ooh, I have an experience that's similar to that one. I want to talk about it. So all you're thinking about is what you're going to say, instead of listening to what they have to say. So that's level 1 listening. We are listening to ourselves, and not to the person that's speaking. So this is not a good level to be at when you're trying to coach somebody. Our second level is focused listening. And we also refer to this as level 2 listening. So in this one, you are intensely focused on what the other person is saying. There's nothing distracting you. You're not thinking about your experiences. You're not thinking about your past. You're not thinking about your future. None of that intrudes into this conversation. Your own ideas don't get in the way of you hearing the other person. One of the things you can think about is, for example, if you think of those of you that are parents, think of a mother with a sick baby, for example. When you have a sick child, all your attention is focused on that child. And even if, there's a bomb, that's dropped, outside your window, all you're listening for is your baby's cry, right? So that's focused listening. This is a great place to be as you are coaching others. So keep that in mind. And then there's the third level of active listening, and this is called global listening. So also called level 3 listening. Like level 2 listening or focused listening, this is also completely directed towards the other person. Mm-hmm. Focus on the other person, which is what you should do as a coach. But in global listening, we're not just listening to the words that are coming out of that person's mouth. We're also focused on what is happening while that person is speaking. We're picking up on their body language, the inflections or the tone of their voice, every pause, every hesitation, you are picking up on that. So Anu talked about intuition a few slides back. So intuition plays a huge part in global listening or level 3 listening. You can feel when they're trying to avoid something. Right, it's very easy. Those of you that are parents, again, you can tell when your kids are hiding something, right? They're telling you half of what's happening, and you're like, yeah, I know there's more to this. So that's your global listening. That's your intuition speaking, right? Or you can also tell when they're pulling towards something. If they're excited about something, but that's not really coming out through their words, you can tell that there's something else that's exciting that's happening in their lives that they want to share with you. Mm-hmm. And you have a sense of what that will be. So in levels 2 and 3 that we just went through, the focused listening and the global listening is really where true coaching can happen. This is where you want to be as a coach. At these 2 levels, you're really able to be on the receiving end of someone else's agenda. So we talked about being unbiased, about not having an agenda as a coach. We don't have our own agendas, but that person has an agenda that we need to listen to.
Yeah. There's also a bit of self-management required to be on level 2 and 3, right? There are times when your mind will drift. Self-manage yourself, acknowledge it, and say, I'm sorry, I just wandered for a bit. I tell my clients, if you ever hear me say, Oh, I went to Tahiti. That means my mind wandered. Because if my mind is wandering, I wanted to wander to Tahiti, right? Um, I'll share a technique that I use to stay at level 2 or 3 listening. It's a technique called voice mirroring. So when somebody is speaking, you mirror their words in your mind, right? So if some, as Lucy was talking, I was repeating her voice, the words that she was using in my head. If I'm doing that, it's really hard for my mind to go elsewhere because I'm focused on those words. So that's a technique that works for me. There are plenty of other techniques, and you will find the technique that works for you to keep you at level 2 or 3.
And there's one thing that you said, Anu, that I just want to go back to, right? If your mind does wander, like Anu said, sometimes she goes to Tahiti, and I go to the Turks and Caicos sometimes, but it's and Anu said, that she'll say, "I'm sorry, I was in Tahiti" or something. Please do that.
Yeah,
One of the things that we talked about before is trust, right? How we want to make sure that there's trust in this partnership. Coach and the coachee, and there's nothing better to build trust than to be truthful about what's happening. So don't ever pretend that you were listening. If you really weren't listening, let them know and ask them to repeat what they were saying, and there's nothing
yeah,
wrong.
exactly. Because if you BS your way, they will find out. And that's the sure shot way of, because they have intuition too, they can pick up on the fact when you're not paying attention, right? Um, Cool. So that was active listening, powerful questions. So one of the things we talked about was feedback. I want to share a technique for providing feedback. It's called impact feedback. This comes from the Center for Creative Leadership, and they call it SBI. And they added a second I at the end. So it's SBI. And I want to walk through this. And we want to focus on this because we are trying to differentiate between impact and intention. There is a saying, we judge ourselves on our intention, we judge others on their impact. So, quick example, if I say something and to Lucy and she goes, "Oh, that was mean." And I say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be mean. I apologize. So get over it. That was not my intention." Get over it, right? That's what I'm expecting. I apologize. Get over it. When the tables are turned and she says something and I said, "That was mean." And Lucy says, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." My normal reaction, most human beings, is, "I don't care what you meant. I was hurt." Intention versus impact. So the SBII focuses on both, and it focuses on very specific feedback. So SBII, situation, identify the situation, not a vague thing. "Hey, Lucy, last week, do you know how many hours they were in last week?" So be very specific. "Lucy, last week in the 11 a.m. Friday team meeting," very, very specific. "In our call that you and I had Thursday evening at 5 o'clock," very specific. What was the situation? What behavior did you notice? Now, what somebody told you, you can say things like, "So Lucy, last week in one of the meetings, Elizabeth said you did what?" You have no business giving that feedback whatsoever. So my feedback is, in last week's 11 o'clock meeting, you interrupted me as I was speaking. This is the behavior I have observed. What was the impact on me or on the people that I have observed? I felt completely dismissed. Impact. What was the impact of that? The focus here is on the impact on me, not on the behavior. So I'm not saying, "Lucy was really rude last week." That becomes defensive and will lead her to explain herself. "I don't care. It was done," right? Spilt milk and all that. If I get to say, "You interrupted me," and I kind of felt completely dismissed. The fourth letter, the second I, was that your intention? It's an open invitation to have a conversation. Because if I say, "Lucy, what you did was very rude," walls are going to go up, defenses are going to go up. She's going to start justifying what she did, and we will get nowhere. But if I talk about the impact the behavior had on me, I know Everybody's now feeling bad for Lucy. Right? If I say this is the impact on me, then there is room for conversation, which is what coaching is about. It's about conversation and communication and exploration. That's it. So figure out how can you provide impact feedback to your clients, to your teams, to your organizations. This is tricky, so practice a lot. Right. I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to keep moving on this. Arc of the coaching conversation. If any one of you have read Lisa Atkins' book, Coaching Agile Teams, you know this. You've probably practiced it if you've been coaching in an agile organizations. But I want to focus a little bit on this because in the heat of the moment, everybody forgets this. Okay. Lisa talks about, like, I still remember the first time I saw this, I remember her saying, so every coaching conversation has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It can be a ramble of words for 25 hours. If you focus on beginning, middle, and end, and you focus on the arc, a 10 to 15-minute conversation can be one of the best coaching sessions you've had. But if you ramble on for an hour, it's probably more painful. Right? So there is, Lucy talked about active listening. So as the arc starts, we know that our clients, our teams, our coaches are going to be venting a bit, right? Do you know what's happening in my team? Vent. Just listen. No judgment. This is where active listening comes into play. You're not focused on, you're just waiting. You're just listening. I have a sticky note that I keep near my desk, and I pull this up every coaching session. It says, wait, why am I talking? Right. This sticky note stays on next to my camera every coaching session I'm in. So I remember that my job is just to listen and hold space. So at the beginning of the arc, conversation beginning, you're going to vent. Your coachee is going to vent. Just listen. They need to get something off their chest. Give them the space to do so without judgment. Once the venting wears itself out, or if it goes on for too long, then you go, all right, so how are you feeling about that venting? You feel good? All right, so what do you want coaching on today? So you want to make sure you're getting to the point where you're articulating the topic. Identifying the topic is very important. Because if you don't have a topic, then it's just a great chat. And you haven't been in service of the client. You haven't held your client's agenda. So make sure you're looking at, you figure out, even if during the venting you say, so what it sounds to me is you're in conflict with so-and-so, and that's what you want to focus on. So maybe from the venting, as you're listening, you pull out a topic, you articulate the topic and say, this is what I'm hearing. Is this what you want the conversation to be about? And then you are articulating the topic. Now you're coming to the middle of the conversation where you're trying to get over the hump. This is where you're asking a lot of powerful questions, as many as you can. Quick tip, do not stack questions. That means don't ask 3 questions in a row without a breath. And once you ask a question, stay silent, count to 15, because the person may be going, huh. They may be thinking. And if you throw 5 other questions on them, you've just lost their train of thought, right? So give them time. Once you get in the middle, getting them over the hump through lots of powerful questions, no problem solving, just active listening and powerful question, trusting your intuition, right? Now you're trying to look at different ways to brainstorm. What are you going to do? Maybe the coachee is coming up with ideas. You could say, what else can you do in the ways of writing to fix your problem? So maybe you're giving them some thoughts, not direct suggestions, but approaches to get there. That you are supportive in this time. You're brainstorming together, collectively, you're brainstorming. Throw the craziest ideas out. So what do you think of writing 5 books in a week? Your client's going, really? How about I write 1 page a week? All right, let's go there. Brainstorming, crazier the better, right? What you want to avoid here is problem solving. Just brainstorm ideas, throw the craziest ideas out. Once the ideas are out, you're going to start saying, okay, so of all these ideas, which idea resonates? And you're going to start, it's like a funnel. You start narrowing down ideas and narrowing down ideas. And then finally you're getting into action. Your coach is going, okay, I think that's what I want to do. I think that's the thing I want to do. Your key at the end of the call, this is where you're getting to the end of the call, is accountability. You got to hold your coachee accountable. It's useless if you just have a great chat and do nothing with it. You have to have a follow-up. So what's your accountability? Your accountability can be explicit or it can be very soft, right? An explicit accountability will be an agreement that you say, all right, when you finish your work, when you finish your action, how will you let me know? And maybe you say, well, when I do this, I'm going to send you an email. Explicit agreement. A soft agreement could be something you say, so how would you like to be held accountable for this? And you say, you know what, I think I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And explicit accountability is I'm asking you to do something to hold you accountable. The soft one is, so how do you want to be held accountable for this? And you may say, you know what, once I'm done with that, I'm going to just let my best friend know. All right. Because I don't need to fix you. I don't need to control anything that you're doing. At the end of the conversation, we always end with an acknowledgement. Right? An acknowledgement is not about, so what I think about you. That's not acknowledgement. It's not about, oh, you know, I saw you step up. That's not an acknowledgement. An acknowledgement starts with, you are. So, Lucy, you are brave. You stepped into this. You are. It's acknowledging the human in front of you. So you start with asking for permission, you go through the coaching conversation, and you end with an acknowledgement, because this person in front of you has done a lot of work now. So you're acknowledging the work they've done, you're acknowledging where they've gotten. Throughout the conversation, there is no leader and follower, right? The coach and coachee are equal. It is the coaching relationship that has the power. This is also why at the end of the conversation, you're not going to say things like, I thought you really stepped up and you were great the way you did this, because now I'm telling you you were good. Just by that, I have power. The coach cannot have power. The coachee doesn't have power. It's the relationship that has power. So you acknowledge, you champion, but you don't say, I think you were fantastic. That's a compliment. And you can give it to them after the coaching session is done, but never during. So that's the coaching conversation. My suggestion to you is, so this particular drawing, I had my daughter, who's an artist, draw this for me based on Lisa's picture. Lisa has great pictures. This is available to you. Print it out, have it handy. Do not forget the arc of the coaching conversation, because you need to be aware of this so that you can keep it positive, keep it constantly moving, and not getting stuck in, let me tell you what you should be doing right now because I know better than you do. Right? If you forget the coaching conversation, you can step into mentoring, and that's one thing you don't want to do. So how do you get better at this? You practice. You practice, you practice, and you practice some more. That's the only way to get good at coaching. So we recommend coaching dojos. If you come to in some of my classes, we practice coaching dojos. I think the first time I threw Lucy into a coaching dojo, she was like, wait, what are you doing to me? Because it's fast, it's rapid. 3 people normally. There's a coach, there's a coachee, there's an observer. Every turn is 15 minutes. You figure out who coaches whom. So if it's Lucy, me, and Tom, right? I say, okay, I'm going to coach Lucy, and Tom's the observer. I coach Lucy for 10 minutes. Tom gives us feedback. Lucy and I give each other feedback, and we shift. And then Lucy coaches Tom, and I'm the observer. Then Tom coaches me, and Lucy's the observer. 45-minute things. So if you have a community of practice, a Scrum Master COP, great way to spend an hour. Review the arc of the coaching conversation first. Get into a coaching dojo. You can do this with 60 people or as many people. Bring them into triads. You can do this on Zoom. You can do this in person. And if you don't have multiples of 3, just do coach and coachee, and they give each other feedback. Coaching dojos are a very powerful tool to practice coaching in a safe environment so that you're going to get feedback. One of my first coaching dojo that I ever went to, I thought I had a poker face, but obviously I don't, because when I'm coaching now, I do, right? When I get into a true coaching situation, I have my coaching face ready where I'm not reacting. It's self-management. My first coaching dojo, I still remember at the end, the observer and the coachee both said, "Your words in your face did not say the same thing." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They said, I was saying something, and as I was telling you my situation, you did this. So I shut down. I'm like, "Oh my God." So, self-managed. So getting feedback like that what has made me a better coach. So feedback, practice, practice, practice some more. Lucy, what would you add? Anything?
No, I mean, I would agree. And I was laughing when you were talking about the poker face because I have a really hard time with one. And that is one of the things that I have to work on, self-management. And I know in the beginning, when we asked people to something different, ask people to give us what they thought a coach was. I know some people said teacher and some people said mentor. So hopefully now you can see that it's not the same thing. So Anu is my mentor. So, because I want to be her, tell me exactly what I need to do, but she's also my coach. And when we get into that coaching relationship, that mentorship is gone out the window, right? It's all about me. So just make sure that you understand which hat you're wearing. And as you know from other conversations we've had and other webinars that we've had, there are these 4 hats that you can be wearing as a Scrum Master. And you could be in one meeting and you have to wear all 4 of them. Just make sure that you're wearing the right one at the right time. And I think that's the hardest part, is really learning when to switch from one to another. And I do that pretty often, right? But it is hard and it just takes a lot of practice.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what we would love for you to do now is take a minute. We've talked a lot of stuff here in the webinar. What would you take away from this? What would you take away to change or help your coaching back into your office? What would you take on to improve as a coach? So take a minute, write stuff down. We are going to ask you to drop some stuff into the chat window as to what are your biggest takeaways from here. Just take a minute and write stuff down. I have this reflection. 60 minutes is too short for a webinar, especially on coaching.
Yeah, there's a lot more that we could talk about for sure.
If you know what you're taking away, drop it into the chat window for us. Then we're gonna start closing out. So Lucy, maybe we close out. What's a coaching model I like to follow? So we're jump into Q&A. For me, I use the coactive coaching model. That's one of my favorite ones. I have the model up here. On here, I don't know if you can see it. You can't really read it, but it talks about, there's, yes, I can share a link to it. Absolutely. It's one of my favorites. It talks about everything we've just talked about holding a client naturally, creative, resourceful, and whole, dancing in the moment. Just talking through all that. I will share a link. Use contracting sessions. Yep. Practice active listening, personal and professional, impact feedback. Yep. Coaching rainbow, the arc. Yep. Don't give compliments, acknowledge people. Wonderful. If this is your first coaching conversation, welcome. You're stepping into a fantastic world. Coaching is a guide, good listener, explore, not explain. Yes. If you take that away, you are golden to not only coach, but also to receive feedback. Pushing on the hard questions. Yes. Exactly. When they say, I don't want to talk about it, say, all right, then let's talk about it. I've done that to Lucy a couple of times.
Yeah, that's what I said.
There are times when Lucy said, I don't want to go there. I'm like, okay, let's go there. Wait, why am I talking? Control your face, staying silent. Wonderful. Understanding the coaching responsibilities. Excellent. So, well, thank you for being here today. I will be sending out a thank you note to everybody. We will post stuff. We'll have links to the next webinar, which is around using liberating structures for facilitation. Reminder, let us know if there's any class you're looking for. I'm happy to work with students. If you've been in a webinar of mine, if you've been in a class of mine, let me know. I will try and figure out discounts for you if I can, depending on where the class is. So come into some of our classes. And then finally, we will send you the link to the communities of practice. So what's going to happen is at the end of this, I'll have a recording. We'll post the recording. We'll post the slides, and I'll post some of the resources. I'll post up a link to the coactive model. I'll do all of that, and you will get an email from us. If there's anything we can do in the process, let me know. Oh, Elizabeth, you guys are too much. So
Thank you, Anu. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Helen. We miss
I'll
you.
see you soon. I miss you guys too. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Thanks, ladies. Speak soon.
Thank you, guys. If you have questions, I'll hang up for a couple minutes. But otherwise, we'll see you all next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. All right.